Madness Podcast, the best of the underground. Make madness your ritual.
Hey, Ritual Madness Podcast. How you guys doing tonight? It is June. It's not January. It's June 24th, Friday, June 24th. And I am in the studio hanging out. Beautiful Friday evening. Hopefully you folks are tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. As a matter of fact, do me a favor, check out ritualmadnesspodcast.com. On the right side, you'll be able to connect with us on a multitude of links. Ritual Madness Podcast on Facebook, Ritual Madness MN on Twitter, Ritual Madness Podcast on Instagram, Ritual Madness Podcast on YouTube. And YouTube is way behind. I've got lots of videos to upload and edit and do all that stuff, but it's been so chaotic, hectic. Summer starting, it's nice out. You got to get outside and enjoy some of this weather because it doesn't last very long here in the Twin Cities. It is very cold here real soon, so I'm out there trying to enjoy it. So do me a favor, check out Ritual Madness Podcast on Listen to My Radio. That's LISTE and the number 2, My Radio. You can download that from your app store, iTunes store, or the Amazon Play Store, Android Play Store. Also, if you shop Amazon, do me a favor, scroll down on the right side. There's a little Amazon link. Click that Amazon link, bookmark it as your own. Anytime you buy something off of Amazon, it kicks us back a couple pennies at no cost to you. You can buy your stuff, support the podcast all at the same time. Doesn't cost you any more. If you are in a band or you have friends that are in bands and want to submit your stuff to Ritual Madness Podcast, do that at ritualmadnesspodcast@gmail.com. And drop us a line. Let us know how the show is going, if you like it, if you don't like it. ritualmadnesspodcast.com. Again, you just click the episode tab. There's 132 episodes up there for your enjoyment. And we are on episode 133 right now with Gene Holister from Rose Presents. And do me a favor, check out Disciples of the Watch podcast. That's dotwpod.com. Very good podcast here, local podcast. Also, check out the Root of All Evil on KFAI's Fresh Air Radio every Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Goes till about 6 in the morning or some stuff like that. Also, Ritual Madness Podcast presents Monthly Madness at Lee's Liquor Lounge, Volume 3 and Volume 4. Volume 3 is July 15th. 21 plus show, $7 cover, 8:30 doors, 9 o'clock start. The Regenerators, the Wolf Council, Cult of the Wizard, and Aziza. And again, Volume 4, which is one of my favorite Black Sabbath albums, by the way. August 19th at Lee's Liquor Lounge, the Pre-Metallica Party, Dumpster Juice, Mastiff, Outside the Murder, the return of Outside the Murder to the Minnesota music scene. Thank God we're back here playing some stuff. Trail Boss from St. Cloud and Gar. Very excellent bill there. Check it out. We've got here $2 Jack and Cokes, $3 Rolling Rocks, $300 in tattoo giveaways from Lowbrow Saints Tattoo Collective. It's always a good time. The last two have been phenomenal. Again, I'm hanging out with Gene Holister. How you doing, Gene?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing excellent, man. I am excited to have you on the podcast. So many questions, so much stuff we've been talking about before we even got started here, man. And like I said, I'm really stoked to have you, man. It's been a while. It was tough to get you to lock down. You're so busy all the time.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it gets busy. Summer gets to be a busy time.
Oh, for sure, man. I can imagine. You've got all kinds of stuff in the works all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. We're always working on stuff. Even we work. Everybody's working so far out ahead of things now. You have to even start working on festivals a year ahead of time.
Right.
And, after you get done with the festival, you usually have download meetings, we call them, and it's just kind of, what would we change? What do you think?
Yeah.
And, kind of just while everything's fresh, thinking about what we do different or keep the same for next year. So
yeah, I bet, man. I can imagine it's a year-round gig. You got to keep on top of everything, man. There's got to be promoters out there that are trying to steal that egg from you all the time.
Oh yeah. That's one of the tough parts about it. It's like there used to be, something called history that mattered,
right?
And you'd bring up bands, about it through the clubs and into the theaters and up to the arenas, and generally you'd stay with them in the old days, and now it's getting tougher and tougher, and we're an independent promoter, compared to a corporation like Live Nation or AEG. So it's tougher for us to get tours because those companies are buying the entire tours, and where we would have been, maybe promoting a Bette Midler date or, there's a long list probably.
Oh, I can imagine.
But, they're buying up the whole tours now. But, we still keep out there and do our special events. We have Soundset and we do Warped Tour every year.
Right.
And we started Festival Palomino a couple of years ago with First Avenue. And
Yeah.
and we do Soundset with Rhymesayers.
That's becoming a really big deal, man.
Yeah, it's really grown. Rhymesayers' partners are great. They're really good at social marketing and
Sure.
they know the music, and we wind up, doing a lot of the production part and
Right.
and along with a lot of the atmosphere touring crew.
Yeah.
So and it's been great. It's a cool event and really been fun to be a part of something that's grown so big. I think we're the biggest hip hop festival in the country now.
Right.
And at least for one day festival, and big enough to be mocked on Saturday Night Live a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. Lindsay Lohan did a bit a few years ago, where they mocked that they were a hip hop station out of Shakopee, Minnesota.
Right.
And it was 4 a.m. and really cold, and they're talking about all the station closings or all the school closings, and they had all the local school names right. And
Right.
It was really just.
That's
They
hilarious.
had to have a Minnesota writer that was out in that Soundset going, really Minnesota hip hop Mecca. or
Mecca of the
something.
world, right? Yeah, exactly. Tourist
So-
destination, Shakopee, Minnesota.
Yeah. So it's cool. It's just fun to be part of it like that. So
Yeah, for sure, man. So I've got a million questions, and you probably have a million stories.
you can ask away.
So what I really want to know is what, I like to ask the guests a lot of times, what were you into as a kid? What were you listening to? What were your folks listening to? What sparked your musical interest as a kid?
I think it was a combination of things. My parents liked music, but they weren't heavily into music, like avid music fans. They just liked what they liked, and
Sure.
they had records and they played them, and I got to appreciate some of the artists that they liked, and some of them were, this is the 60s, so
Sure.
and they used to go to rummage sales and antique sales and flea markets and stuff like that, and I
Right.
was 6, 7, 8 years old and getting bored, and can I go out to the car and listen to music? So I'd go out to the car and listen to, WDGY or U100 or KQ or whatever it was back
Right.
in the day, and hearing,
WDGY. Now that's a call letters I haven't heard since I was a little kid.
it
man.
still exists on AM,
Yeah.
and but they were playing, the Doors and Hendrix and Dylan and music like that, and other 60s artists, during the time it was current music, and so I was, being interested in keyboard stuff and wanted to learn how to play the organ, and mostly I wanted to learn Doors like stuff.
Sure. Right.
And start learning Camptown Racers, so I got pretty bored
Yeah.
after a while, with the theory and learning, songs I didn't really want to learn. But I had a friend that, we were probably 12 or 13, and he found all the label offices in town, the record
Sure.
label offices. So
Now, how old were you about then?
probably about 13 years old,
Right.
12 or 13, and we'd ride around. He was a pretty avid music fan, and I certainly was into music by that point, and we rode around to the different label offices, and we'd just kind of show up and ask them for stuff. And
How many were around at that time?
in
In Minnesota, anyways.
there was probably 4 different offices, and it was Warner Brothers and the Epic and geez, I'd have to go back. There was Casablanca that was part of some of the other music groups, so
Sure.
it was still kind of like how the labels have, there was WEA, which was Warner Electra and,
Right,
and
right,
Atlantic, and then
like subsidiaries. and
yeah,
stuff.
and so Universal was, the different a bunch of other labels, and
Sure.
they've been bought up too over time, by corporations,
Right.
and downsized, and some have come and gone, but yeah, we'd go to 3 or 4 offices, and this is in the 70s, early 70s, so as 12 and 13-year-olds walking into these label offices, and they're kind of looking at us going, yeah, oh yeah, sure, here's some posters, and here's, maybe we'd get a couple of records and
Right.
stuff like that, but then we'd go off to the next one. We do it about once a month in the summer, and then wait till spring happens again when we could do it.
Right.
And in the meantime, we were discovering, bands and, the New York Dolls, and I mean, we were listening to The Who and the Stones and the Beatles and Hendrix and stuff like that. Of
Right.
course, back in the day, Pink Floyd, whatever.
You mean when concerts were like $2 and $5 to get into?
Right, yeah. I have some ads still from concerts where it was like, Robin Trower, Wishbone Ash and the Stampeders, and it was, $5.50, $4.50, and $3.50. And I remember The Who was expensive at like $8.50 in 1976 or something, and that was general admission, yeah.
Right.
And so, I started going to concerts and
What was your first concert?
I think it was actually the State Fair in Linda Ronstadt or something like that in 73 or 4. And then it was
1 or 2 years older.
yeah, it was like Black Oak, Arkansas. Black Oak wasn't one of the first ones. It was the Doobie Brothers and the Outlaws, and and from there it was just like I started going to shows, quite a bit.
Sure.
So I was hooked.
Right. I can imagine.
And and I started, even I had friends that were in bands then, and before I really started playing and all, and so I'd, go help them sometimes, and
just hand out flyers or just kind of roadie for them? Or
just kind of roadie for them, yeah.
Where do you want this stuff?
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine played The Walk for Mankind in, 78 or something at the Met Center. They used to have a band before they'd go walk, do this walk to raise money. And so I remember helping him that day and, doing it. My cousins were in bands. So
the Met Center was right where the Mall of America is right now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yep.
I think that was one of the first venues that I seen a North Stars Penguins game there when I was a kid.
Right, yeah, I saw a few hockey games.
Yeah, man. I remember that specifically because it was just so crazy, man. The fights and things like that in there, it was great. I seen Bon Jovi there. I seen Cinderella there. Motley Crue twice, I think I seen there.
I think they did the Dr. Feelgood tour for 2 nights there.
Yep.
And I remember
Girls, I think I seen them there.
Did Rat open that show or something?
I'm not even positive.
I remember that one of those two with Rat and those guys, but when I started working for Randy back in those days, doing shows at the Met Center.
So how did you get started? I mean, from the very get go. Say, so you're doing some roadie and stuff. You're into the music.
I was working with bands and friends' bands, and I moved out of town for a while, but I moved back. I moved out of town during high school. I moved back into town probably in 1980, and around when I started with Randy it was 1985, and my girlfriend still, I moved in with her then, and I wasn't working, and our neighbor was working for Midwest Ticket, which is precursor to Ticketmaster, and they needed some people to take phone orders and just work there. So I went in. I probably missed the first day even, and went in the next day and started working. And I seem to remember that happening. But, within a couple of months, I was sort of assistant ticket manager, and it was all hard tickets, so you'd have to get in a whole box of tickets, or boxes if it was, a Metrodome show. And
Sure.
count in all the tickets and make sure everything was there and send them out to the different record stores that we used for outlets.
Right.
And
now back then, what were some of the record outlets? I mean, there was a fuckload back then.
Great American music stores, I remember, and back I'll convolute it because way back it was like Harpo's and Wax Museums and those kind of places,
Right.
and then some of those got bought up by Great American Music Stores, and so we were using those as ticket outlets. And so we'd send them out to those outlets and have them on sale, and then we'd have somebody go pick them all up and get all the cash back the day of the show. And we'd have to count all the tickets back in and figure out how many tickets were sold. And, that's what you settled with the artist on, and,
Sure.
and they'd want to see the Deadwood. And you'd pay them based on, it's still the same. You pay them on ticket sales, but it was all a physical ticket, not like
digital numbers,
printed home, or you can still go buy physical tickets, but it's we're in a digital age. So,
yeah. I got an email, and you can print this little barcode and whatever
or have it on your phone even and have that scanned and that kind of thing.
That's crazy, man.
But back then there wasn't even barcode scanners. You had to tear the tickets or whatever. So
just like the movie theater.
Yeah, and actually, the promoters would get in disputes with bands sometimes over how many people were in the building, and they'd have to count all the torn ticket stubs. And,
Damn.
And prove.
Did that happen a lot?
Not a lot, but it happened, and you hear stories about it. And I think I was involved with one or two that were
Really?
like that, where it was like, well, I want to see all the tickets. We're
Can
counting them all.
can you remember
I no,
what artists were?
I don't recall now.
Yeah.
There was a lot of artists, and I mean, I just don't remember which artists they were.
Now, was it their tour managers that did this, or was it the artists
it was
themselves?
the tour managers.
Right.
They might have questioned the ticket drop or the sales numbers and wanted to see what it was based on how many tickets actually went through the door. But
Sure.
I remember once or twice maybe that happening.
Yeah.
And it
Geez,
wasn't-
that's got to just be like, oh, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, would they?
all right, we'll get a bunch of people and start counting,
Right, yeah.
and we'll bundle them in hundreds and
Nobody say your numbers as you're doing.
well,
One,
yeah, right.
5. Fuck. Start all over again.
So yeah, I mean that's that. That's the old days.
Yeah.
But and even I've heard stories from other promoters where it's like, actually he was representing a band and it was in Louisiana, I think, and it was like 14,000 people, and he thought there was 17,000 people, and they wanted to do a count, and as the story goes, one of the sheriffs pulled out his gun and he put it on the table and he said there was 14,000 people here,
Wow.
and they went, okay.
Holy shit.
So I'm not, I can't repeat who it was, but
Sure.
it's just, it's one of those stories where you go, wow, and that happens sometimes in the days, people
Sure.
even it probably happens now once in a while, but
But probably not as much. I mean, back
Probably
in the
not
day, you
as
could get
much.
away with so much more stuff. I
there's
mean,
way more outlaw,
have you
but-
back in the day? Did you personally have any situations like that where tour managers would get tough with people? I mean, I've never heard any bad stories about anything that you've done personally, Gene, as far as being a promoter. But you've been a promoter for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you hear about nowadays that there's people doing pay to play. There's people doing where bands will buy onto a certain package and they'll tour for 5 to 10 dates or whatever, and they get set amounts that they do that with, and you hear about promoters that will the ones that are coming up. Now you mentioned this before about how you would make friends with the tour manager, and they would know they could count on you in this state. They could say,
Yeah.
we're gonna call Gene up and go, hey, we'll set this show up with Gene and get things set, Gene and Randy and set things up. Where now you hear stories about promoters that will try to get on these packages or grab these packages before the big guys come in and take them, the Leo Presents or whoever else,
right.
and take these packages, but then end up stiffing some of these bands, and then they just disappear. They never work with them again.
Well, that's true. I mean, when you start stiffing bands, that's your reputation goes to
Right out
to
the window,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, I mean, ultimately, I'd start working with bands early on, and it's bands and their managers,
Sure.
and their agents for that matter,
Right.
because it's the agents that sell you the shows and know that you can do the job or don't do the job, And Bobby from Leo Presents, he was around a lot when like Station 4 was,
Sure.
he was
Yep.
around hanging out, and I was kind of almost laughing this summer because I was looking at the Caboose schedule,
Yeah.
and it was Trapped and Prong, and I went down the list of 4 or 5 or 6 bands, Cannibal Corpse or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, I promoted those guys. Oh yeah, I had Tommy, from Prong over Ryan's Corner
Yep.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I call it Ryan's Corner yet
Yeah.
today. And promoted all those bands back in the day, and some of them Bobby was hanging around for at that time.
Yeah.
I trapped at Urban Wildlife when
Yep.
they were just a baby band, and they sold it out, and the floor collapsed.
Right.
In Urban Wildlife.
Right.
And so, it's yeah. I mean, for us, we were jumping on. I mean, as independent promoters, it was different back in the day when we were starting to do like White Zombie, right?
Sure.
And so the first time I promoted White Zombie, I think we were being outbid by Jam or something like that, and we one last ditch call to the agent and said, look, we'll raise our offer to this, and and it was a significant offer,
Right.
and we got the show, and we wound up working with them for years and years,
Yeah,
White
yeah.
Zombie and through to Rob Zombie, and with bands like Disturbed I started working with when before they had a record deal.
Sure.
Before they had an agent even.
Right.
A friend of mine was a tour manager for Mind Bomb, and I'd worked with them, and then he found this band, and he had another band called Loudmouth out of Chicago that I think played up here a couple of times.
Yeah.
But, he just said, can we get him a show? And so we had Disturbed come and play the first of 3 at Ryan's, and they flattened the other 2 bands, and it was the week that they signed their record deal, and so I wound up working with them for a long time, and we worked with Slipknot for years, bringing them up through the clubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you try and work with bands early on and develop the relationship with them and hope that they stay with you. And there is a lot of bands that do, I still do a lot of club shows,
Sure.
but, and we're still trying to develop relationships with new artists. Gary Clark Jr. is one that we've
Awesome.
Really
Great
tried to
guitar player.
develop. Yeah, and there's a bunch of guys that are coming up that are really good. And First Avenue, everybody's, we're competing now against Live Nation and AEG, and I've got First Avenue as an ally, and we've been doing shows together, and they've got to fill their club, and they're competing against now Barfly and some of the other clubs that are in town, Varsity and so forth. Varsity being run by Live Nation, and
they just started to make a comeback. Like the Varsity wasn't doing shows for many years. They like redid that whole place, and now they're starting to. Yeah, that was one of the first shows I had ever done, was at the Varsity when Decker was doing things there. Yeah, and it was just a shithole, man. It was just run down theater.
Yeah,
and now it looks great. It's in it's in College Town. It's just kind of
yeah. I think it's in a bad spot for parking.
Yeah, horrible spot for parking.
It's in a good spot for college students,
Right.
and it does a lot of weddings. They found that niche. They remodeled it. They had to redo the sprinkler system, to be capacity compliant. And
well, wasn't the ceiling falling apart too for many years too?
I couldn't tell you. It probably was a rundown theater, so somebody had to come in and renovate it. And I know First Avenue's working on that theater in St. Paul that may open in 2017 or 18 or we don't know yet. But,
sure.
But there's a lot of venues in town. I mean, even compared to, for Minneapolis, we're kind of spoiled.
Sure.
We've got, for years we had, the Fine Line, and obviously we've got First Avenue and the 7th Street entry, and that premier club, that's a premier club around the country.
That's a mecca.
That's known around the world. Yeah. So, you've got, but we had Quest for a long time, and we've got the Caboose, and the Caboose would be considered, an A room in a lot of markets.
Right.
If you used to go to, Omaha used to have the Ranch Bowl, and that was just a crap place, and everything's pretty centrally located for us here. Unfortunately, Ryan's isn't around.
Right.
I like that club a lot.
I love that
place. It was just a great little down and dirty rock room,
Right.
And the rock was kind of the same thing, just a down and dirty rock room, but it was a good, place for certain bands,
for sure.
Not every venue works for every band.
Right.
So, and we've been spoiled in this market because we have all these great clubs, and not every place does. And much less, people go, well, I have to, Myth has shows that people want to go to, and it's like, oh man, it's way out there,
Right.
and it's like, well, yeah, it kind of is, but if you're in LA or Chicago, or, you have to drive to, like everything's not next to one another.
Yeah.
That's why I say we get a little spoiled in that way. But
man.
we've got a great music scene and a great town that promotes it. So,
Yeah, it's been many years, man. It's just continuously, it's been, breaking down and rebuilding and, constantly generating good bands. And there's a lot of stuff that comes out of here, man.
Yeah. And I've even, stood in front of a club and talked to artists that day and said, you got to understand that if you draw a 1 mile circle around us, there's, 20 clubs that might be, having some sort of live music, whether it's some guy sitting in a corner playing a piano or a guitar, or whether it's a full band,
Right.
So, and then you draw a 20-mile radius or 10-mile radius, and there's quite a few. So, in some ways you can complain about it, but but we really shouldn't in some ways, because we do have a lot of places that really do want live music and original music too. So.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about the first song that we played, that Space Station Number 5 from Montrose. You were telling me about that. I've never listened to that to Montrose.
Yeah, it's really a classic record, actually, and it's Sammy Hager's, really first major band,
Right.
that gained any popularity. And
I
he was
enjoyed
in
it.
he
I'm
was
gonna
in
have to
it for
check that out.
Yeah, he's in it for the first or second record. Rock Candy's on that. Space Station Number 5. It's a great record, top to bottom. I think it's
Awesome.
one that I grew up with. Kind
Sure.
of, but it's still. Winds up in a lot of top tens
Yeah.
in like Guitar Player magazine or
Sure.
Guitar World
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely,
So,
man. I love it because, like I said, and people who listen to the podcast know that I love when the guests pick their music, and it's always different. It's always something that I may have heard before or haven't heard that particular deep cut on there.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of this stuff doesn't even get played on the radio.
yeah, I was trying to pick stuff that was maybe not, artists you would hear all the time or hear of, or maybe hear something that was a little bit different by them. And it's so tough to pick, man, there's so many great songs and artists, and, like what genre or what,
Right.
because I like jazz, I like blues, I'm a big blues fan, and
It doesn't show in your list.
I-
I expected it to show more blues in the list.
yeah,
Actually,
Rory Gallagher, but is kind of a more bluesy, oriented guy, but he's also rocks, and it's it was just tough to pick stuff.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were kind of explaining how
I
you
could have gone T-Bone Walker,
Right.
but you can always go Stevie Ray Vaughan or Hendrix or something like that, but everybody, a lot of people know them, or but then you go back to Albert King or Buddy Guy, or the guys that Hendrix was listening to, and then go back further to the guys that Albert King and those guys were listening to.
Sure.
And that's how a lot of musicians find those early artists, by going back to the
the people they like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's why I even like UFO and I'm a guitar freak, so it's like, Michael Schenker is one of my favorite guitar players.
Sure.
If I had to list, top 10 albums or something, or live album, it's always, a lot of it's live,
Right.
And
Well, that's when they improvise so much more on there. There's so much more feeling. They make those guidelines when they record it. You know what I mean? And everybody, I remember being a kid and hearing the record and maybe seeing one of those bands in concert, and like bummed out that they didn't play it exactly like the record.
Oh,
but then
yeah.
as I got older, I'm like, man, they're elaborating on what It's like I played this 45 nights in a row. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more, and they add so much more to it. Frampton and Nugent and shit like that, where they're really just into it. And I mean, Hendrix never played the same fucking song,
Right.
Or played it the same every time. You know what I
Right.
mean? He just added so much more to it. Stevie Ray was like that too. Just that soul into it,
live was amazing.
Yeah.
And just, I think, I listened to, if you listen to Studio UFO or Studio Thin Lizzy stuff versus the Live and Dangerous
Right.
record by Lizzy, or the
Yeah.
Strangers in the Night, and it's, there's a reason, though, again, those show up on guitar players' lists as
Yeah.
favorite records
Yeah.
all the time, because they're just, great songs top to bottom, I think, and smoking guitar and soulful. It's like Schenker's, there's a lot of bluesy stuff that he
Sure.
plays, but
Right.
the guy is just, to me, a phenomenal player with a lot of feelings.
Sure,
So,
man.
it moves me.
Absolutely, man. You got to do that. That's what a musician loves, man. That movement. So let's take a listen to some tunes. We got some Tragically Hip. We've got some Joe Walsh, Nina Hagen.
Nina Hagen.
Okay.
Yeah, German artist, and kind of more in the punk era, but very a little bit bizarre, but very cool.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear that. And a little cheap trick to end it out. Stick around, folks. We'll be back. We're gonna take a little break. Tune out. Hey, Ritual Madness Podcast, episode 133, hanging out on a beautiful Friday evening, June 24th. It is about almost 10 o'clock, hanging out here with Gene Holister, having a good time, chit-chatting. Man, he's got some great stories. I wish you could hear all of them, because he's got so much good stuff. Do me a favor, check out ritualmadnesspodcast.com. On the right side, you can connect with us on a multitude of links, iTunes and Stitcher, Facebook and Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. do me a favor and download the Listen to My Radio app. That's LISTE and the number 2, My Radio. Put that on your phone. You can listen to the station 24/7, 365. A bunch of different stuff. A lot of good metal, a lot of punk rock, comedy even, alternative, rap, all kinds of good stuff. It's a plethora of good music, good listening stuff. If you shop Amazon, do me a favor, click that Amazon link. Bookmark it as your own. Every time you buy something from Amazon, it kicks us back a couple pennies at no cost to you. If you are in a band or have friends that are in bands and you want us to play it on the station, we'll definitely do that. Send your submissions to ritualmadnesspodcast@gmail.com. That's ritualmadnesspodcast@gmail.com. And I got to give a shout out to my friends at the Disciples of the Watch podcast. That's dotwpod.com. Another local podcast that does some really good stuff. They do a lot of news. They've got a lot of great tidbits about music in general, and they like to do the lists that we were talking about, how the guitar player lists or the top tens and whatever, and they just shred them every single time, and it's hilarious to hear those guys go back and forth. I hear them go back and forth about Deep Purple and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're huge Deep Purple fans, so they just get ape shit crazy over it, and how messed up the Rock and Roll Hall, the Pop Hall of Fame is,
Another overlooked artist, right?
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. So do me a favor, Ritual Madness Podcast is doing some shows at Lee's Liquor Lounge. We are on our 3rd, Volume 3 and Volume 4. July is Volume 3, July 15th, 21 plus show, $7 cover, 8:30 doors. 9 o'clock show with the Regenerators, the Wolf Council, Cult of the Wizard, and Aziza. August 19th, Volume 4. Again, one of my favorite Black Sabbath albums, by the way. August 19th, pre-Metallica party featuring Dumpster Juice, Mastiff, Outside the Murder, returning to the Minnesota music scene, and Trail Boss from St. Cloud, and Gar from Minneapolis. It's going to be 2 really, really good shows. You guys need to check them out. Going to be a good time. Don't forget to check out The Root of All Evil on KFAI as well. I'm giving shout-outs all the way around to all the folks that I enjoy very much here. We just got done listening to some cool stuff. Some Tragically Hip. We did some Joe Walsh, Nina Hagen.
Nina Hagen.
Nina Hagen, okay. That was bizarre.
Yeah.
We were talking, and I'm listening to it, and it's just all over the place, man.
Yeah, she's really cool. I mean, I don't know, I got hooked on a record called Nun Sex Monk Rock, and and it was just a great record, and it is really bizarre, but it's kind of like, I think early PIL is a little, has a little bit of that in it too, that kind of sound, and Nina was just, it was, punk, era, and just a bit out there, German artist that, but just was really cool musically, I thought.
Yeah, it was cool. It was different, and I like different. Different is good, man. Yeah. And we did some Cheap Trick after that. We talked a little bit off the air here about some of the people that you've had a chance to meet through the years, and you're talking about with your partner Randy, and getting to know these people. And I mean, you're talking about Randy meeting Bill Graham, and to me that's just unbelievable. I would have just sat there and you said, having, conversations with them, and, different promoters or different managers and promoters getting nose to nose with each other. I would step back and go, holy shit, I'm getting yelled at by Bill Graham. You know what I mean? I would have just freaked out. Like,
I think Randy kind of pointed at somebody else and just kind of went, I just didn't want him yelling at me anymore. But, there is times when you get in yelling matches, or there's, difficulty, either managers or tour promoters or, tour managers, production managers, whatever, and different personalities, and maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe they're just always like that, unfortunately. But, you got to deal with those personalities sometimes, unfortunately, and they can be, super nice, or they can be super tough. And,
right.
And, like I said, with Randy, I've been fortunate enough to meet a whole lot of, really iconic and famous promoters.
Sure.
And through the years, a lot of famous agents, Frank Barcelona and Barbara Skydell, who, started a lot of careers here in the U.S., The Who and Bruce Springsteen and Alex Hodges, who's, still working and has been involved with Stevie Ray Vaughan and the Allman Brother. His list of references are,
huge.
His accomplishments are amazing. Otis Redding back in the day.
Right.
And I just feel really fortunate to be able to do what I do and to have met a lot of the people and get to know them, on the level that I have, either playing golf with them or just hanging out sometimes in a bar or
Sure.
at a conference or something.
Right. Yeah, man. I can imagine. You said that you've become this veteran now, and you're starting to talk to these younger guys that are approaching you and talking to you, and
Yeah.
you were mentioning one particular one, like a younger guy, not necessarily questioning you about
Yeah.
like how long have you been doing shows at the Caboose or working with the Caboose, and you were kind of like what is this guy questioning
Well, that's what I was wondering at the time. The way he phrased it, I thought, and I get it because I don't work with their agency all the time, and we're independent promoters, so I'm not talking to every agency every day. And there are new guys that come up through the company, and
Sure.
so they might not know who I am or know not know the history. And so he kind of went, well, how long have you been doing shows at the Caboose? And I kind of took it like, what the heck do you know?
right, exactly.
And I had to, I said, well, how old are you? And he backed up really quick and said that, no, the Caboose is one of my meccas, like First Avenue. I've
Sure.
heard a lot of,
Yeah.
a lot of my favorite bands have played there, and I've heard some bootlegs of this or that, and so he was very familiar with the club in that way, and with the Minneapolis music scene more so too. So he was kind of a fan from that aspect, and sometimes you get asked because it's like maybe a new agent or somebody who really doesn't know, the history of Rose or of Randy or I, and,
Sure.
and they're kind of new, and I was new. I told you a story about being new,
Yeah.
early on, and
Yeah.
and why did this guy get mad? And it's like, well, his history goes way farther than mine did.
Sure, sure.
And so yeah, I mean, it was kind of a funny moment, but he's a good guy, the agent that I was speaking of, and
Yeah.
and we worked together on stuff, but it was just one of those moments where it was like, oh well, okay, come on, man, really, do I have to do this?
Right.
But
Roll up your sleeve and flex for him.
yeah, right. Let's see. What do you want? References?
Right. Yeah. Here you go. Here you go. So what were some of the highlight shows that you can remember? As you were coming up, what were some of the ones that you had your hands involved, where you moved from? We talked about you working with the tickets and working with things like that, and,
Yeah.
and kind of slowly moving your way up. What were some of the first shows that you had your hands in?
Well, I think it's kind of a little blurry, some of the David Bowie Glass Spiders or Motley Crue shows that, like I mentioned, Dr. Feel Good Tour,
Sure, yeah.
and we had a call from Prince's representatives one time. We used to do a fair amount of Prince shows,
Sure.
and we had a call one time where it was maybe a Tuesday afternoon, and they called and said, "Is the St. Paul Civic Center open that Sunday?"
Right.
The arena, when it was still the St. Paul Civic Center.
Sure.
And we called, and it was. And, it takes a day to get everything kind of going and figure it out. And he said, well, I want to play Sunday. Tickets will be $10, for all seats, and get them on sale as quickly as we can. And so we, I was still back in the hard ticket days, so we had to rush order hard tickets for the arena and get them out to all the outlets. And
Now, how hard is something like that to do in that short amount of time? You got less than a week to do
a
it.
lot of coordination, and just arranging all the stage hands and making sure the production's in line and that you can actually get the tickets out and back. So it was a rush job, but we got it done, and so that was cool. And there's been a lot of just we did Ozfest with Warped Tour together,
Sure.
on the same day, and I think that was maybe the only time it happened. It might have happened one other time,
Right.
But we were certainly one of the.
Was that at the Metrodome as well?
No, that was at Canterbury, or out at Somerset, out at
Okay.
Apple River, Float Right Park.
Sure, sure.
And so we did 40,000 people that day, and Ozfests for years, and the '93 X Fest that we did for all those years.
Sure.
You know,
And that's where I met you for the first
Yeah.
time. I mean, I had seen you at so many shows as a kid coming up and just had no idea. You always, hey, smiling, what's up? How's it going? And then we had a chance to open the X Fest 2000 and 2001. And I walk back there and I'm just like, holy shit, This guy's running everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You were handling business, sitting at the desk.
Well, we were
shelling
booking,
out
we're
business.
booking all the bands and paying all the artists, and
Sure.
my job is a little bit of a glorified accountant because I do all the budgeting and do all the artist payments and
Right.
deal with the money and that kind of thing, and deal with the tour managers. So being a small company, I kind of joke in that I'm the vice president, but I'm also the cleaning person. So you kind of know what gets done last.
Now I got a question for you. So one year there, I can't remember. I think it might have been Ozfest. There was a year where a couple of the guys from Hatebreed and a couple guys from Slipknot got into some issues, and there was a big to do, and some people got maced and people got punched in the eye, and they took a cart.
It was Tattoo the Earth. Actually.
Oh, Tattoo the Earth. Okay.
Yeah, and what happened was, those were some days. These are. I'll tell the story. It's kind of funny. I've told the story a little bit here and there, like in classes, but it was a thing where Clown and a couple of the guys from I don't recall the bands offhand. I close, but I can't quite recall. But there was like 6 guys on a golf cart,
Sure.
and they drove over the second stage fence.
In the population, though.
It was just snow fence, and they went out into the crowd, right?
Okay,
And they
yeah.
drove through the crowd, and
Yep.
from the reports, people were kind of diving out of the way of the golf cart, and
Yeah.
security was trying to stop them, and they couldn't get them stopped,
Sure.
and they got up near the main gate, and security had them stopped, and they maced the guys. And so Clown hadn't performed yet with Slipknot, and he had been maced, and then there was a couple of other band members that were maced from another band.
I think it was Hatebreed.
Yeah, I was thinking it was some other band, baby band or something. But at either rate, a couple guys got arrested somehow.
Yep.
And
Because Hatebreed didn't end up playing that day. I remember that.
I thought they did.
I don't think they played that day.
Well, I thought everybody played because there was a moment where we were like, well, we had to sort out really the problems, right?
Right.
And we had a rock doc there, and so he was kind of dealing with the guys that had gotten maced,
Yeah.
and especially Clown, because we were like, well, what happens if the band can't perform?
Sure.
Is the band going to incite the crowd because of what
Yeah.
happened? I mean,
Yeah.
really, it was these guys that were going through.
You
the
guys
crowd.
put the squash on that whole thing, though, right? You guys told them you can't be doing that shit, right?
It took a long time for us to get everybody back down to earth, kind of, because the tour wanted to go beat the crap out of the
Security.
yeah, and other guy that maced him, and I think the guy that maced him was actually the owner of the venue, who also works security.
Oh, wow.
So there was, we want that guy off site, so I had to get him off site, and he was like, all right, I'll go pick up garbage cans through town or something like
sure,
that. And
yeah.
but we had to kind of talk everybody down as far as like, no, you're not going to go. That's not a good idea to go try and beat the crap out of those security guys.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons for it, and one of them is it's just stupid. But
There's a lot of police officers that were like off-duty cops and stuff involved.
there's
in
a lot
that.
of
prison
there's
guards.
a
and
lot
shit.
of prison guards that
Yeah.
were off-duty
Yeah.
cops too,
Yeah.
or that were security there. But whatever. It was just this was a problem, and we had to get it back down to earth. And Danny Nozell was Slipknot's tour
Yep.
manager at the time, and he's now Dolly Parton's manager.
Yep.
But he was Slipknot's tour manager at the time, and luckily he and I knew each other and had a good relationship from before that. And there was a few other people that were there that I knew. I think Wookie, who was Rob Zombie's tour security guy for years, and we had to go have these meetings, and in the meantime have the bands play and act like there was nothing wrong,
Right.
because there really wasn't. But we just
Sure.
other than we had to make sure that Slipknot was able to play, and
Sure.
they did, and so that. But it was also one of those things where if they didn't play, would the crowd riot, or would they start tearing
Sure.
the grounds apart? Well,
Right.
there's all those things that you have to kind of worry about or deal with, and ultimately it wound up being fine. We lost a lot of money that day, but everything was fine. And again, that was one of those days that with the agent, he called me the Monday following or whatever, and said, well, what happened?
Right.
And I told him what happened, and I said sorry, and he goes, well, what are you sorry about?
Right, yeah.
And so
You were driving the golf
and
cart.
I said, well, it was my show. I don't like when shit like that happens. You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
not fun. You know, and it's I want things to run smooth and not have the tour wanting to beat the crap out of security.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and so. Everything was fine. But it all worked out, and we didn't have any incidents between security.
I remember being
Really,
in the crowd and then being up in the 93X area
Mhm.
and hearing about that, and it was such a tension in the crowd because everybody was so like, man, you hear this, and it's like third, fourth, fifth person down the road telling
yeah.
you, oh, one of them got maced and the guy clubbed him with a
Right.
prosthetic leg, or you know what I mean, just something crazy, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
and then you hear stories about, and it just added to the night,
Right.
like when they went on, how chaotic everything was, and they're a chaotic band anyways, but
Yeah.
just the performance was that much more fueled by what was going on that night. I remember that because I was hanging out with Paul Gray
Yeah.
at the time. We grew up together playing in Des Moines with those guys a lot.
Yeah.
And so it was just a trip to hear all the stuff, and then all the Hatebreed stuff going on, and a big shout out to Chipper for listening tonight too. By the
Yeah,
way,
Chip.
because it's good to know that you got friends out there listening. It's awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome to hear that. And he said, "Good choice of music, by the way."
Oh,
He digs that
thanks,
stuff.
brother.
Yeah, for sure. And so I love to hear stories that people might have never heard of before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that. You've probably got a million stories like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of stories, and I think we tend to tell them when we're commiserating with other promoters
Sure.
or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
or there's stories
you-
for your friends.
You
And,
keep the anonymity of the people involved.
try to. I mean, I know I've gone into McClellan's class and told some stories here and there,
Sure.
and one of them's that story I
Yeah.
think that comes up, and there's always times when you have to, like I said, deal with something that's going on, whether it's a real problem or an imagined problem or just somebody that's being a problem, and
Right.
you got to step into it. I think I told you the story about the Pantera barricade breaking, and
Yeah.
you have things that happen during the middle of a show that you want to get the show in and you have to fix them, and so
Did a security guy's leg get broken that day?
at which one?
That Pantera when the
I don't know. No, I don't remember that. Maybe. I mean, something could happen. But what happened was, it was I remember the lineup right offhand too. There was Pantera, and I want to say we had like Jimmy Coo, one of the local bands opening, but and I forget who was in the middle. It might have been Zombie or something. But either way, it was Pantera out in Somerset, and they have a cement barricade, and at the time it didn't have re-rod in it.
Sure.
And so, it'd probably been seen a couple of winters, and with the pressure from the crowd, it started crumbling in the middle and actually broke. So there was kind of a hole in the middle of this cement barricade, which is actually our barricade,
Yep.
and we couldn't keep the show going because it's Pantera, for one.
Yeah.
And you need a barricade. So we wound up taking some truck ramps from the semis
Yep.
and dropping them in front of the barricade, to reinforce that middle part, and
Yep.
having to, have the crowd step back, and trying to get that crowd to step back is a lot
Right.
of fun,
Yeah.
and especially on a GA kind of situation.
Yeah.
So, but we got it in there, got everything set, and kind of went go.
Yeah. I was
And-
there. I remember that.
And got the show in again, and you have to solve problems on the fly sometimes like
Yeah.
that, and some of that's unforeseen stuff that happens.
Sure. Now you did mention off the air that sometimes those problems arise, and you can either be the guy who jumps in the middle of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or you're one of those guys that kind of sneaks off into the corner and
Yeah,
you know.
I think but it's just, I think part of our reputation, with Rose and with Randy and I or whatever, and if there's a problem, we don't run away from it. And I think if you're a good promoter, you don't run away from it. You've got to,
Absolutely.
you got to jump in the middle and help. And I mean, and if that means that you're slinging chairs or slinging, cable ramps or just helping do whatever, that's what you do. I mean, my smaller shows, I go out and I buy the hospitality for the artist,
Right,
because
right.
no sense in hiring people to do a lot of this stuff. So,
Sure.
and I don't have a staff.
Sure. Right.
So Chip works for me, and there's people that work for us on shows.
Sure.
But when I'm doing a club show, I'm the one who's doing everything from settling with the band to dealing with their hospitality to dealing with production issues and whatever. So,
What are some of the most outlandish hospitality things that you've had to do as far as writers? What are, you always hear the people wanting specific things, or
there hasn't, sometimes the outlandish stuff that bands put on their riders now are just to see if you're reading them and crossing this stuff off,
Sure.
And, when you have a band like the Rolling Stones or Pink Floyd, really the Stones always had, they were in town usually for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so they would set up an area backstage for crew, that would be, and band, that would be kind of a game room. They'd have pool tables and video games. And so we used to have to rent pool tables and video games and stuff like that for
That's still
different
pretty cool.
rooms. And and, there's certain vegetarian restrictions or just stuff that you kind of have to, they want a certain type of tea or something like that.
Throat coat.
Yeah, and throat coat's a common request on a rider, but I think it's gotten to be more professional, over the years. If you go on, I think on Snopes, there's an Iggy Pop rider.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best riders that I've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's written funny, but it's written certainly from the standpoint of the touring guy who is tour manager or whatever, and it's right to the point, but it's written in a funny way, and it's like one of the best reads I've seen as far as riders go. And at some point, even I think I was asked like, well, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen? And at some point, stuff stops being weird.
Right.
So that's a hard question to answer when anybody asks you something like that.
Sure. It's a pretty standard question, but I had to ask because I figured you would have one good one.
Yeah,
Give me a regular one.
What was the question again?
Give me a regular one. What would be a standard?
Well, you always have like tea and coffee set up or something like that, or a certain kind of water,
right?
And
outlandish alcohol requests.
There's a lot of those.
I want 32 cases of beer.
Yeah.
We're going to get 4.
You really want to know, and I hate to say it in some ways, but a lot of the hip hop artists are out of control. Like give me 4 bottles of Hennessy and a bunch of beer and blah, blah, blah. And this and that.
It's like,
you
dude,
kind of go, there's like 3 of you.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And,
they don't even have a tour bus. They're just in a van.
Right. Or they come with, there's 3 in the group and there's 30 fans.
Their entourage.
30 of their entourage. But you get some really big riders and you have to,
do you have to fill all of them?
No, it's a wish list,
Do they
you get really stupid, right? Like sometimes you're doing a club date and you get an arena rider from a band doing a club date, and it's like, well, none of this really matters. What do you really need?
Right.
And you just wind up dealing with them in reality, and you go, what do you really need? And
do you chuckle? Do you have a chuckle with the manager? The tour manager at that time.
Sometimes it depends upon what.
Do you kind of giggle and just go, really?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
come on,
let's be realistic here.
Yeah, sometimes I had one story that was sort of funny, and it was a new band, and Joe Spanbauer. It was back when we were doing Urban Wildlife, right?
Sure.
And Joe was the house guy there, and I said, I don't, I was doing a lot of shows at the club at the time, and so I couldn't remember if it was just like a dream that I had about one of the shows or whether it was actually like something that happened. Joe said, no, I think that happened. That really did. I was there. I think he was there. He was pretty sure of it, but it was one of those things where, the club only held 350 people,
right?
So it was a pretty small club, and this was the first band of 3 on the bill, right? And I'm sure, I don't know if it was, it had to be one of the band members or one of their, little tour guys, whatever, and they sent them to me on this mission, and I just remember in this that I was.
Where's my damn turkey sandwich?
Well, it was pretty close to that. We were just behind the doorway. If you remember at Urban Wildlife, it was like through this curtain.
Yeah.
and you're in what was the kitchen,
Yep,
right, which
yep.
was like the dressing room and
Yep.
kind of there was guitar tuning room and
Yeah,
whatever. So
yeah.
so I remember talking to whoever was in the headlining band that night, and I don't know if it was a tech guy or the guitar player, and he was tuning guitars, and this kid came up and he says, "We have a problem." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, okay, what's the problem?" And he said, "Well, we have all this stuff on our rider," and he started listing it off. And I said, "Well, you did get some water and I think you got some beer and you got to buy out for dinner, and it was a touring band and
Pizza
so-
Luce's across the street.
yeah. So it was, it was like, you actually were treated pretty well for an opening act on a 3-band bill in a 300-seat club. So you might have even had some sodas or something like that. And I mean, it's not a lot, but you treat them,
Sure.
give them something.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, well, what's the problem? And he goes, well, if we don't get a bottle of Jack Daniels, we're not going on stage. And of course, my thought was, oh, you're new. and, and then I thought, well, I'm gonna do you a favor and every other tour, promoter that's down the road from you that you deal with. And I said, well, no problem. You can start getting your gear off stage right now. And when it comes time for your band to play, I'm going to be the one who goes up on stage and tells them why you're not playing for them tonight, because you didn't get a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Right.
And it's like,
Just to set them down.
And, oh, by the way, I'm not going to pay you the rest of your guarantee either. So if that's cool, And of course, I think his jaw got longer and longer and longer with every statement.
Right.
And he just kind of went, and ran away. And I said, oh, I didn't think we had a problem. But I mean, it was just.
Did they end up playing?
They played, and it was just a dumb demand. And I'm sure it was, it was just a new kid, right?
Right.
And so, but you learn lessons somewhere along the way.
Sure.
And it was like, well, all right, I'll have a little fun and I'll
So
teach him a lesson.
So you must have had that situation, that scenario happen quite a bit for you to say, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. Here goes. This is it. I'm going to set this kid back in his chair for a minute.
Well, it was mostly I'm just going to set him back in his chair for a minute,
Yeah.
and frankly, I would have done it because it's just like, really, you're going to be that stupid? Okay, here's how it's really going to be,
Right.
and. And I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but I mean, it was just like, look, here's how it really works.
Right.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to play by that rule, then
Screw you.
yeah. And, you're going to learn, okay, at some point in your career, could you make that demand?
you
And I would
probably
go,
could.
I'll go get you a bottle of Jack Daniels. No
Right,
problem.
right.
But, not tonight. And so, and
You
not,
probably could have called 5 or 6 local bands that would have gladly come from the
Anywhere.
sound gallery across
Right.
the street. It would have loaded right in and played for nothing, for
Right.
peanuts. You know what I mean?
well, and it was just,
That's
it
hilarious.
was just a moment,
That's so good.
and it was it was funny, and I'm pretty sure it happened. Joe's pretty sure it happened. It just seems like, and it certainly, it was certainly something I would say, and
That's
would have said,
hilarious.
and it's, they played, again,
CG,
at some
that's a
point
good
they-
story. That's the kind of story I'm talking about. That's the one right there where you just set him back. Now listen, young man, have a seat.
Right, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna teach you a lesson really quick.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he appreciated it down the road. I don't know.
I bet you he did, man. He had to have. Or
Either
he'd
that
been
or he's
like,
going, man, that guy was such a jerk.
we're never doing
He
anything.
wasn't even going to let us play.
Right, exactly. That's his own fault, dummy. So we got some more tunes. So I wanted to get to your particular playing. How long have you been playing in a band? How long have you been playing guitar?
I've been playing, since high school pretty much. And
Sure.
I played with a couple of guys from Fergus Falls. I moved up to that area when I was in high school. And Paul Hermes was one of the guitar players, and Chuck Hermes' brother was in the band. And this is before they became Mile One, if you remember those guys.
Nope.
They were up in, near the Fargo area, and then they played around Minneapolis quite a bit
Okay.
here too. And so this is probably, again, early 80s, mid 80s, something like that.
Sure,
And
I was
so-
still way wet behind the ears.
Yeah, and I started, and so I was playing with those guys before they started Mile One, and that was, and I was still pretty much learning how to play guitar. I'm sure I sucked pretty bad at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been playing since then, and I've been playing now with some friends of mine that I've known since, junior high and high school, and like I said to you earlier, we kind of call it our bowling league or poker night, but
Right.
some guys go play poker, and we go play music and write songs and have fun doing it and play gigs here and there. We're playing Sunday at the, outside at the joint patio from 1 to 5 in the afternoon.
This is
Sunday.
the June 26th.
Yep, this Sunday.
Nice.
And then a week from tonight, actually, July 1 at Whiskey Junction from 8 to midnight. But an afternoon gig this Sunday, a matinee, if you will. And
rhythm and blues, rock and roll.
It's I guess alt rock kind of. I don't know what Americana you'd classify it as.
Sure.
Now. We kind of go between, the Tom Petty meets Jason and the Scorchers meets Neil Young meets, maybe Sabbath once in a while. This is one of the more, it's kind of I think what we're going to play is one of my band's songs, which is, I don't know, we put it on one of our records. It's sort of a cover, a traditional blues kind of thing that we just kind of played it one day and just kept playing it. So
what's the name of the band?
It's the Rhinestone Diplomats is
Awesome.
the band name. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
We got some of that coming up right now, and we've got a little Monster Magnet. Now that's a band that didn't they get like coins thrown at them one year? Some crazy shit happened with those guys.
Well, that could have happened. That happened with Flip. I was managing Flip, back in the day, and
which
Flip,
is making a comeback, right?
They're playing the same night we are. So stop down to Whiskey Junction first, and then go see Flip afterwards at First Avenue.
Yeah.
But yeah, we won the warm up. The band did. I was managing them at the time. Won the warm up the zombie contest on MTV.
Yeah.
And so we got to go to Detroit and play. And our choice was the bill was White Zombie, the Ramones, and the Super Suckers.
Wow.
And then Flip. And so they said, well, you can go between the Ramones and White Zombie, or you can go and White Zombie was closing, or you can go between the Super Suckers and the Ramones. And it was like, well, this is Detroit. We're going to get killed if we go between the Ramones and White Zombie. So we took the other slot, and they videotaped it for MTV, and they had all like the MTV jocks there at Matt Field, and a bunch of them were there in Detroit with us, and during the show, the crowd was throwing coins at the stage, and through the video, you see all these like shooting stars going towards the stage, and it's the reflections on the coins.
Yeah.
And the Rob Zombie's tour production manager came back after our set, and he had all this change in his shirt, like it was just bulging. His shirt was, and he was holding it all. And he came into the dressing room, and he dropped it all onto the table that was in our room, and he goes, "Here, you guys earned it tonight." And I think we took it all back to the hotel and left it as a tip or something at the bar.
Awesome.
But it was
that's awesome.
It was pretty fun.
No, they did some really cool stuff, man. When they did X Fest and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
the helicopter drop-ins, all the stuff they dropped. Oh, that was great, man.
First year they dropped cereal and stickers out of the helicopter, and then they dropped, I think. Well, I know it was feathers because Flow-Right got pretty mad about that. That year. So but.
That was awesome. So much, so cool. And one of Chip's favorite bands and Jimmy Coo's favorite band. We got a little Thin Lizzy coming up. And then Rory Gallagher is what you were talking. You were talking about that with Dick Cavett and
Hendrix. So Hendrix was on Dick Cavett years ago, and I think Cavett asked him, how does it feel to be the best guitar player in the world? And Hendrix said, well, I don't know, ask Rory Gallagher. So it's just a guy that I was been a fan of for years and years. But
no, that's pretty cool when Hendrix says that about you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's quite a compliment.
Hell yeah,
I got to meet Rory one time, and he was a cool dude. Got to meet him before he died. So.
Sure. Wow. What year did he pass?
Oh man, I think he died in like 1990 or something like that. He was only 44 years old.
Wow, man!
And but just a phenomenal guitar player, and I don't know, I don't even know how I discovered him necessarily, but like I said, I had a couple of friends that were pretty hardcore music fans too.
Sure.
So I probably either discovered it through them or through kind of the way any other musician finds guys.
Right.
Hendrix mentioned Roy Gallagher. Let's check him out. Whatever.
Yeah, man. I was listening to something about Billy Gibbons talking on, I think it was Mark Maron's podcast.
Yeah.
He was talking about jamming with Jimi Hendrix. They would pull a couch from one hotel over to Hendrix Hotel, and they would put records on, and then Hendrix would teach him how to do different guitar
Yeah.
licks and crazy shit.
Yeah.
So cool, man. Hearing that
would have been
straight
awesome, man.
from
just
Billy Gibbons,
I'd love
man.
to hear that story.
Oh, excellent podcast for sure. You got to check that out. Mark Maron had Keith Richards on his too, and
Cool.
Barack Obama.
There you go.
So yeah, but very cool stuff. Well, let's take a listen to some tunes, folks. Stick around. We'll be back. Hey, Ritual Madness Podcast, episode 133. Hanging out with Gene Holister. How you doing, Gene?
Good. How
Good.
are you?
I'm hanging out, having a good time, man. It's always fun because you folks get to miss all kinds of really cool conversations off the air that we just can't comment about. So I just wanted to kind of ask, because you are like you said, you're a veteran of doing this type of stuff. And I had Bobby Olson on here two podcasts ago, and there was a big buzz over whether or not he was making people pay to play, and whether it was okay to have people to sell tickets to work for their spots to get it going. And we had a really good conversation, and there were we put a lot of stuff to rest when it comes to whether it was a pay to play situation. And I'm sure that you've heard about people doing this stuff, and you mentioned in LA and things like that, where it's not feasible for the younger bands coming up to shell out all this money and expect them to be able to pull it out. And I'm not saying that Bobby did anything wrong, and he really explained himself well, and all the conversations and the questions that came in. A lot of people wanted me to just slam on Bobby, and I really didn't want to. I think that he's picking up a lot of stuff that a lot of promoters don't want to deal with anymore. You know what I mean? Some of the Cannibal Corpses and some of the heavier shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned, I was looking at the Caboose calendar, and I know Bobby was around, quite a bit when I was doing, I keep calling it Ryan's, but Station 4, the lab, whatever it was at the time. And he was around, for those shows, and I think his girlfriend was working the door for us, and worked at the club, and a lot of those bands, Trapped and Prong and Cannibal Corpse and whatever, I was promoting back at either Mirage or Mr. Nibs or at Station 4, Ryan's.
Sure. Yeah.
So certainly now I don't know that I would have. I mean, the bands were good bands, right?
Sure.
But would I have cared about the Trap date, doing it myself, or doing the Prong date? I think that, I like those bands. I always did, and I always will. I don't think I would have done the shows, now, or under the right conditions, I would have, Obviously, it's kind of a bummer that we don't have a Ryan's Corner anymore,
Right.
kind of place,
Right.
But certainly the Caboose is a good venue, and I've done, I did Bruce Dickinson there. I did Joe Satriani at the Caboose before.
Right.
We've done some pretty heavy shows there too. So, and he is bringing in bands that people want to see. There is no Don Decker anymore,
Right.
Unfortunately, and doing the underground metal or any of the deeper.
He's
metal.
watching us though. That's his
Yeah,
vest
I know,
right
I
there.
see that. That's awesome. I love Don, and I did a lot of stuff with him back in the day, and certainly, there is that hole. Pobs didn't make it. There isn't that really many good. Triple Rock's a great club, as far as
horrible parking.
Rock shows, horrible parking, just like the Varsity, horrible parking,
right.
And
I love the club though. It's a great venue.
yeah, it is, and shows are. It's cool to see shows there, and they do a variety of stuff there, metal and punk and other stuff, but we've lost a few of the good, better, what I would call metal clubs or harder rock clubs, so that, and especially in that 500, 600, 800 seat, range.
Right. So how long did it really take you to get? I mean, I would consider a Bobby kind of like a mid-level player, right? I mean, he's pulling in.
He's pulling in some nationals, He's I guess they call him a smaller local promoter, more of a street promoter, my situation was I came into a real situation. I mean, Randy was a major promoter. He was doing the Stones back in the 70s and major tours coast to coast. Right. And so, coming into work for him.
You got on the wings of a serious
Yeah,
thing.
he had his career established per se, and established the company,
Sure.
and I came in as one of his guys.
Hmm.
Then and I had to work my way up in, through the ranks, and you can either get respect from agents and managers
Right.
and as somebody who whatever, who can do the job, or who's responsible, who's respectable, who takes care of business, or or you just can't deal with that environment or the job, and
Sure.
and you become a marginal promoter, or there's plenty of scumbags that pop up and screw bands and then disappear and
Sure.
do horrible jobs on shows, but they buy the bands and they might overpay because they don't know what they're doing
Right.
and lose a bunch of money and then just disappear. And well, the agents love them for a minute because they overpay.
Sure. They're getting their
They
their
make
cut. Yeah,
and
they're
they
getting their
make them look
percentage.
good with their band, and,
Yeah.
and they get a bigger percentage as a cut. But and then in the long run, I don't know that sometimes they're doing their band a favor,
Sure.
by letting
Right.
them work for a different promoter.
Right.
But that's the band's choice sometimes, and that's the agent's choice and the manager's choice, and
Sure.
does any talent buyer think that a manager and an agent always make the right choices? Of course not, because
Right.
you always believe in yourself.
Sure, sure.
And when they go with the other guy, you kind of go, well, either that was stupid, and you'll see, or they'll be successful, and whatever, it happens, and we've been, like I said, we've been lucky in that we've got a good reputation. We've managed to create a lot of festivals and shows over the course of time.
Sure.
That help us keep on going as independent promoters, and we keep going, and that's just kind of it. You keep trying to create events, and we do plenty of one-nighters through the year, just like any other promoter, but
Sure.
we do try and work and create special events and annual events. So
Sure. That's awesome, man. So, I mean, you've worked with 93X, you've worked with KQ and all that the bigger stations in town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how does one set those things up? I mean, it is a lot of negotiations between the station themselves and what they would want as far as bands, or do they give you, or do you get kind of like a list of who may be coming to town or anything like that?
I
How
think
does that
it
work?
really becomes, you if you're looking for smaller baby bands and bringing up new bands, you look for stuff that you like and that you want to work with, and
Sure.
then you reach out to the agents and you try and, to help foster that band's career,
Sure. Sure.
because that's your interest and the band's interest, and, we're music fans,
Sure.
so we want to see bands succeed and grow. It comes from us reaching out to the agents. If we're doing a radio station show, if we'd wind up producing, like we have the Summit 30th anniversary bash this year. It's 30th anniversary of Summit Beer in Minneapolis,
Sure.
and they're doing their backyard bash, and we got involved this year and booked the talent, and
Who's all on that one?
well, it's Bob Mould and Bully and Dem Atlas, Bad Hats, Nookie Jones.
Nookie Jones.
I'm
That's
gonna-
an awesome name.
I'm gonna, yeah, the local band, and so a lot of them have local ties. I'm gonna forget a band, and they'll be mad at me, and I'm sorry, but they were very conscious. Summit was to curate something that has Minnesota ties to
Sure.
it, because they're a Minnesota brewery.
Right.
They started here. Now they're distributed in a number of states, not everywhere in the country, but they're doing very well, and it's their 30th anniversary, so we got involved, and it's just it's a fun event for us, and we get to book a bunch of bands,
Cool bands, yeah.
and they wanted it to be really diverse, so we reached out to these bands, and fortunately most of them said yes, and
That's awesome.
and so that's just another fun event to be involved with and help with, and it's I think it's a cool event. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and obviously we like getting involved in things like that. It's something different for us, and
Absolutely.
we like producing outdoor stuff, and we've been doing it for a long time.
Right. Festivals have been good to you guys, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Randy was, We Fest for years and years, and we did 10,000 Lakes Festival for
Damn,
quite
that's
a
a
few
big
years.
festival, man. We Fest was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah, We Fest 45,000 people a day for 3 days.
Man.
50,000 people, and
Bunch of rednecks getting crazy.
bunch of country people running around drinking beer,
Yeah.
and having fun. But yeah,
Hooting and hollering.
and so it's all just. I think Randy's happy to be done with it. I didn't really have to do a lot with that. We'd get busy on some of those weekends, and boy, it bummed me out that I couldn't go up and see Buck Owens play with Dwight. The same day as Dwight Yoakam up there. But just because I think Buck's cool, and the fact that Buck and Dwight were together with that Bakersfield kind of thing was would have been cool to see. But we happened to book Rob Zombie the same day, so I was on zombie duty. But that's all right. It's all good.
Well, that's pretty cool to be able to have that opportunity to see some of that that old country stuff, and then have the rock shows too. That's really cool.
No,
man.
it's great. I mean, I've been lucky to work with a lot of different artists and varied music. Pantera to Art Garfunkel. Whatever.
Right. How was that? How was Art Garfunkel?
It was fine. Cool. He was quite, it was a good show. It was interesting, and
what are some of the standouts for you as far as like great shows, awesome people?
Man, seeing the Who in '75 with Keith Moon was awesome. And one of the cool, one of Wild shows was Pantera and White Zombie together at Target Center.
Oh, yeah.
There was the floor was just a giant pit,
huge pit,
and it was quite a sight to see. And
I think there's multiple pits inside, on the outsides of the big one.
No, it was. I got to watch it from the side for a while, and it was quite the sight to see. And there's been a lot of great moments. Doing Pink Floyd or
that would have been awesome.
Having being involved with a lot of stuff. I mean, even some of the best shows were some that people didn't come to. It was doing Peter Wolf from Jay Giles' band at the Caboose. It was only 250 people there or something, but it was just such a great show. And getting to see a lot of these bands in small venues.
Now that was when it was different. When it's not renovated, it was the old school Caboose back then.
Yeah. It was
not as open,
right?
More tubular, I thought.
Yeah, they've done some changes there and they've taken out a wall. There used to be that wall going into the back, and they took that out, and so they've done some upgrades to the venue. But there's just been
the sound system is so much better now.
Yeah. And the lighting system. You used to be able to do blackouts by just touching the, like when I was running lights for friends' bands or something.
Switch?
Like you'd have one hand on the lighting board and you'd touch a piece of metal on the spotlight and you'd get it to black out because you were grounding everything. It probably wasn't the safest thing to do, but it was an interesting effect sometimes.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. That's great.
But no, they've upgraded their system. It's a good club, and we get a lot of nationals. I still do a lot of shows inside there, and we still work with them on some of the outside shows.
Sure.
And we developed Nate and Nate from First Avenue, and I did a lot to develop that outside patio thing over the years. So.
Yeah. Very cool place, man. Yeah. I've always loved it. And when you have a bunch of motorcycles coming in there too, and just cheap hussies.
Hey man, the club has a long reputation of having a lot of great bands through there and a lot of great artists, sure. and that it was one of the going back to early days of First Avenue, Uncle Sam's and the Caboose. Those were all they were all doing national clubs. I mean, there was Thumpers up not far from here, or the Iron Horse too, that they used to do. A lot of national bands. I know we talked about Todd Rundgren earlier. You and I off the air, but. And I know Todd played at the Iron Horse and Thumpers, I think both. I know I saw him at one of the two, and it was a long freaking time ago now. But
sure.
But
Iron Horse, man, did you do any shows up that way?
I probably worked with some bands that played there, but it's back in the local days. I don't think we ever produced. I've probably shown or before me at Rose. They might have done a couple of things up there.
Sure.
But because Randy was showing productions through the 70s.
Sure. So what? Now, speaking of local bands, you worked with Flip and some other local bands. What's your take on the local bands these days? And what would local bands be able to do to get on some bigger shows? I mean, it's changed so much in the last 15, 20 years, man. I remember playing X Fest and like I said, the first time meeting you, and it's just so few and far between nowadays.
I think it's tougher to have. We were lucky in kind of, even with Flip or X Fest, back in the day with 93X, there was less of a corporate overruling on
Right.
them. And so they had a little bit more freedom, and even 93X was really actually pretty good about championing a lot of the local bands.
Oh, absolutely,
and saying,
man.
Blackfoot Diesel or, Skywind or Flip or
Yeah, right.
whoever was the there were a lot of good bands that were running
sure.
around
Yep.
too, and they were really good about featuring them and helping them, getting them on 93X Fest.
Yep.
I mean that
Yep.
Flip being on 93X Fest was really what got him signed to Hollywood Records at the time.
Sure. Yep.
And besides the fact that they had a great live show, but that was. It's not much different. You still have to put in the time. You still have to just slug it out in the trenches and establish yourself. I think in a lot of ways, Flip was really good in that we did a lot of crazy stuff just to get the band known,
Right.
and to to know the name, and if we could pull up in front of someplace and play in front of somebody, the great thing about 93X back in the day is we would pull these, garage gigs off where it was like, we're going to play at 4:00 at some kid's garage in St. Paul.
Right.
And it would be some fan kid that would, we'd pick and we'd say, your parents have to say yes to this,
Sure.
but we'll come and play at the garage
Right.
until the cops come or whatever.
Right.
And, fortunately 93X would announce it and we'd get a couple hundred kids at this guy, somebody's garage,
Yeah.
and the band would play until the cops came, basically.
Yeah, Wendy Ellis and Neil Hins, Nick Davis, they really had, and Ton Mastery, Weasel, Remy, all of those guys were so supportive to the local scene.
Sure.
I miss it so much. I remember walking through the state fair and they would see, Jack Gilbert, or they would see, Benji from Black Flood or any of the Head Charge guys. And they'd be like, come on over here, and we'd be sitting in the box talking. And it was so cool back then, and you just, I remember labels coming here, when Slipknot got signed, and they would come here and they would ask 93X, like, what are the top bands in town, and you'd get your demos to them, and then they'd hand them out, and you'd be doing showcases for labels, and Danny Nizell had people flying in, and it was such a good time back then, man. And I remember Ton pulling us on the air when they were at the state fair, and her getting just chewed out because she broke the standard of what they wanted her to play,
Right.
just to chat with a couple local guys, and we always thought it was the most amazing thing ever.
I think it was. I think it's really, unfortunately, it's something that is probably an important piece that's missing now. Because it's not missing so much, right? It's missing in the world of metal and hard rock.
Sure.
The Current is really good about championing local bands
Right.
and championing new music.
Sure.
I think they're really great about that. And frankly, they're really great about going, hey, check out Otis Redding.
Sure.
Check out
Right.
Check out Hendrix. Check out. I heard a Priest song on there today.
Sure.
And it was like, hey, they're playing Judas Priest. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And just stuff that you might not hear normally. I wouldn't be surprised to hear Roy Gallagher on there sometime.
Right.
Jim McGuinn and David Safar over there are really great as far as
Sure.
programming and really being they're music fans and musicians too. So they get it a lot more than maybe somebody who's not a musician and is really just corporate, and they're more worried about selling ad time, to make money for the station and than anything else. And
It's a business. I mean,
it's
I get
a business. I get it too. You have to pay the bills, and
I think that people paid more attention, though. They were connected to it back then.
I do
think.
too, and I think they feel that there's a little bit of the Current has that vibe, where it's like people are connected to it because it's local, and they connect with the local people, and they connect with the community, and back in the day with 93X, they were connecting with the community, the local music community in that way. And so, you know, that gave the local musicians an impetus to say great things about 93X and them championing that station.
Yeah.
And without that, then they just become another corporate rock station that's playing corporate rock music for a corporate rock audience and no offense to anybody who listens to 93X. I mean, they do play good music and it's just not like the old days where they can champion new bands and so much as like, a DJ just falling in love with a band and going, you have to hear this. It's like, Cleveland, radio station playing Rush until the country caught on, or somebody else.
Well, they did that with Godsmack. They really pushed Godsmack. I mean, I remember when the first Godsmack album came out, 93X was one of the first stations to really grab a hold of those guys and play them and play them and play them and play them, and they had them on their festivals all the time.
I think that with a band like Godsmack, or with back in the day, it made that station an important station in the country, meaning you always hear about KNAC or whatever, WLS in Chicago or these other major radio stations around the country that hey, if they catch on here, they're going to be played all over the country. So if you can get them played on this station, then that's the hardest part, kind of. Right. And in a way, that's true. And when you have a station, again, now I keep going back and mentioning the Current, and because that's as close to
those old days,
as we can get locally, almost, without going to saying, well, okay, there's other specialty shows on KFAI or KBM or whatever the other stations are that you listen to that aren't the major commercial stations that and even. Okay, well, does 93X even have like a local show anymore?
They do, but it's
that tells you how much I listen to that. I mean, unfortunately, I don't listen to the station very much anymore.
Right. And you know what? I think that it's crazy because they had, Nick Davis doing the Metal Shop, and they were connected with, Visual Addiction as far as Randall doing, answering phones or, and their morning show is still awesome. It's hilarious. It's a great morning show. I think that, like you said, the corporate radio that's playing, they have just that format that's just nonstop.
Well,
and
they're
they don't,
restricted in a lot of ways.
They don't break it up like they used to. Where even the little spots, where the Metal Shop was, a few hours on a Friday, Saturday night, which that's all you really need, on a major radio station like that, just to have that mundane. Linkin Park song every other day, or even Godsmack Disturbed. I mean, those become the bands that they're forcing at you. You know what I mean? Instead of being, oh, hey man, this is the new whatever, this is the new this, or this is the new that. To where, they back then, they had Patrick doing the Loud and Local, and they were, like you said, championing the local bands and the stuff that was around that was doing well. That was like we were talking off the air, as you gauge yourself up, you're coming up from being a local band that has a crappy demo to where you're starting to get a following, a fan base and a following, and you start to get better recordings, and then all of a sudden someone's going, well, look at where they were here, and now look at them now, and and then you become, a Blackfoot Diesel or American Head Charge, or anything like that, where you're moving up the ladder. And I think that it sucks because there's a lot of great bands and always has been in the Twin Cities. There's so many talented musicians in this area. And like you said, there's hundreds of clubs all over the place, and it's unfortunate that we've lost so many great clubs. First Avenue, 7th Street Entry, they're not doing as many local shows, but I don't blame them. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of national stuff going through, and so it's hard to compete with all the dates, and there's more and more national bands and more and more tours, kind of. And so, we need more of the the Amsterdams and the whatever, that you can go play at, the Lees or Triple Rock or that are doing a lot of local bands, and we've got a lot of great local bands. There's bands getting signed out of here all the time, and in different genres. You got Bad Bad Hats, which I mentioned on the Summit show, and there's a lot of them that are doing actually pretty well. I mean, Trampled by Turtles have been doing fairly well, in different markets in the country,
Sure.
and getting out, growing out of this market, and aside from going back with Soul Asylum and
Sure.
the Husker Dus and the Princes and whatever
Right.
before that, but I mean, we're still getting a lot of bands signed out of here, and there's a lot of music coming out of here that's hip hop or it's jazz or it's we've got such great musicians that are doing all kinds of genres of music in town that
For sure.
like I said, jazz and blues and world music and all kinds of stuff, and fortunately there's a lot of clubs that are willing to showcase even jazz and blues and world music and
Right.
and stuff like that. So we're pretty fortunate in that way. It's
Spoiled, maybe even.
yeah, spoiled a little bit, and there's a lot of great musicians here. So I love it here. We've got, I had a chance to move to a couple of different towns, and frankly, for what Minneapolis has compared to everybody else, it's got it all. It's got great food. It's got great music stores from an instrument standpoint. It's got good, music stores from a retail purchasing, CDs or whatever.
What's some of your favorite guitar places around town?
Well, like there's always, Chad at Encore,
Yeah.
Twin Town,
Yeah.
and Willie's over in St. Paul. I mean, and Capitol Guitars.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of the independent, smaller
Sure.
stores that I try and stop into, and they've got all good guys working at them. And we have Guitar Center, a couple of locations, and
Yeah.
I roll through there once in a while and look at
Just to
stuff.
kinda-
But
Yeah.
yeah, if I probably do far more stuff with
Local, the
Yeah.
indie stuff. Yeah.
with the indie guys, and just I've known a lot of them for a long time. I mean,
Right.
Chad and I were playing in a band a bit for a while,
Right.
so just having fun and
Sure.
and they're all good guys, and you get good service from those smaller stores
Sure.
instead of going in and not that Guitar Center doesn't have decent guys working there, but they're working out for different reasons, I
Right.
think, and are they as knowledgeable in some cases as the guys like a Chad or somebody at Twin Town or something like that? I don't think so at all. I mean, I know a heck of a lot more than a lot of the guys that I
Sure.
go talk to at Guitar Center,
Right.
and it's
Right.
like they're going to sell you the wrong set of tubes. It's like, come on,
Sure.
dude, really?
Yeah.
So
What's your favorite guitar to play?
I love Strats.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Strats and Les Pauls are great. I wish I had a Mockingbird, but
Yeah.
there's
Sure.
I mean, just I love guitars. You know?
Awesome, man. Well, let's listen to some more tunes. We got some Pat Travers coming up, some UFO, some Judas Priest, the Dictators, and Ian Hunter. What can you tell me about this Pat Travers' life in London?
Pat, that's one of the probably early songs that I heard from Pat Travers that turned me on to him, and it's just a really cool rocking song. And it's, you always hear Snorting Whiskey or Boom Boom Out Go the Lights or something like that,
Sure.
and this is one that I think it's just a great song, and you don't hear it that often, and it's probably, fairly early song that got me turned on to him, really.
Awesome. And then you got some UFO, Mother
Michael
Mary.
Schenker, man.
Yeah.
Killer guitar player.
Yeah.
Just love that dude, man.
Yeah. Have you had the pleasure of working with him several times?
I haven't. I don't think I've ever done a show with him. I got to meet him, and but I don't remember doing a show with him. I saw them UFO with Schenker on the Strangers in the Night tour, which this track is off of.
Sure.
and they played at the State Theater, and it was just Rick
Wow.
Derringer opened up, and
That must have been amazing.
and we were right in front of Schenker, like sixth row, and it was just to me, it was. I mean, it blew me away, and I mean, I love Schenker and his tone and his soulfulness and the melody, and just he's one of my faves.
Awesome. And then obviously some Judas Priest, some white. What does it say?
White Heat, White Light, I
Yeah,
think, or something.
White Heat, Red Hot, or something.
Oh yeah. White Light, Red Hot. We'll find out. Fuck, I'm bad about song titles, that's for sure.
And then how about the Dictators?
Dictators, a New York band, Handsome Dick Manitoba, the lead singer, and I think this is a song called Minnesota Strip, which
Yep.
was about the in the 70s there was like a lot of prostitutes in New York were coming from Minneapolis
Nice.
and going out to or Minnesota and going out to New York, and so there was I guess a spot that got kind of named the Minnesota Strip, and
Nice.
that's again one of the bands that I got turned on to when I was pretty young and just dug them.
How about Ian Hunter?
Ian Hunter, Mick Ronson playing guitar, and Mick Ronson was also in Bowie's band,
Nice.
in the 70s, and was in Ziggy and the Spiders from Mars and part of that band.
Sure.
And so again, just I think a guitar player that got me hooked on another artist, and again, another one of my faves. I just, it's hard to go through and pick out 14 songs, man. I got so many artists and so many.
Well, we had 20,
music.
25 or something.
I had
to go
25
through.
or so something when I came in, and we narrowed those down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's good. At least we were able to do that, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a listen, and we'll be back, folks. Stick around. Push the buttons first. Ritual Madness Podcast, episode 133. We're closing it out. We're coming to an end here very shortly. It's been a pleasure, man, having you in here, and
Thanks.
I hope a lot of people have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I appreciate it.
You brought some good music, man. Some really good
Thanks.
stuff. I love to mix it up. I like the stuff that's deeper than what people are used to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really enjoy that. A lot of stuff that I've never heard, and I will definitely go back and listen to it again now that I have it.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
And
discover some new old artists.
yeah, man. Well, this is the thing too. We were talking about this before we started the show. Is that I just started collecting vinyl.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
I remember having a pretty good collection as a kid, Kiss records and things like that.
Yeah.
And it just fell off, you know what I mean? You go to CDs, you go to cassette tapes, and then you go to CDs, and I just never thought it would ever make a comeback. And now, this is the thing. We were just talking about promotion and being like, being out there in the street and handing out flyers and doing that and putting them in record stores and things like that. I think that that records are going to make they're already making a huge comeback. They're, people are releasing and re-releasing their stuff on vinyl nowadays.
Right.
But I realized that sitting down and putting a record on your record player and listening to one whole side, you know what I mean? And it inspires you to get up. You're sitting there with that album sleeve in your hand, and you're looking at it.
You can actually read.
Yeah, man.
See the photos.
Exactly. Yeah, the liner notes and everything in there, and like I got a War album that came with the original poster.
Oh, cool.
I got a 74 Kiss Love Gun. Doesn't have all the trinkets and shit that it had in it when it first came out, but buying it at Electric Fetus and seeing it up there, and it's an original copy of it. It was really cool. I got a second pressing of Pink Floyd The Wall. I got stopped outside coming out of Cheapo and Blaine over here, or Coon Rapids, and the guy goes, "Hey, man, I seen you grab that. How much did you end up paying for that?" And I was like, "It was like $22." And he goes, "Online, that's like a $54 record, right?" And I go, "Well, it's a second pressing too." And he goes, "Oh, either way, man." He goes, "How long you been collecting?" I said, like a month, but I saw this album and I had to have it,
Right.
and I was online. I knew what he was talking about. I looked it up, and it's a $54 record, a double album, Pink Floyd The Wall. And he goes, that's what I like about collecting records, is that the old ones are the best ones. You know what I mean? They still have the hiss in them. You know what I mean? They're still dirty. You got to clean them off real good,
Right.
and it just, that old style of taking in that music.
There's something a little ritualistic about it.
Yeah, man.
And I remember, going out and buying records, and when I moved, to Fergus Falls, a small town, we didn't have a really good record store
Right.
there, so coming back to Minneapolis or going to Fargo,
Yeah.
and going to Mother's Records in Fargo, when it was, a really cool record store back in the 70s,
Sure.
late 70s, early 80s, or hitting the Wax Museum or Folk or any of those stores that were around.
Right.
Some are still around, some are gone. Unfortunately, there's too many of them that are gone.
Yeah,
but
man.
going through the bins and seeing the record covers, and
I wish Northern Lights was still here.
yeah, that was a great store too. And there's so many of them that are gone, but to pick up that record and pull it out and to clean it off, put it on the player and to clean it off and to drop the needle and then sit back and listen to it and to have it, have to flip it over,
Yeah.
to play the other
Yeah.
side or whatever. And there is kind of a ritual to that,
Yeah.
and it's just, I got my record player. I have all the records I think that I had as a kid, yet, and
God, I wish I did.
My record player works, but it could use a good cleaning and tune-up. But it still works, and I still play records, and it is just so cool. I mean, I love going to the Fetus still and looking through the record bins and stuff like that.
Oh, I almost put a guy in a headlock the other day. Well, it's been about a month and a half now. I went to Electric Fetus, and it was one of the first places. Okay, I got Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs was one of my must-have records.
Great
I had to have that album. And I look over, and it's up. Here's the Kiss album, and I turn to the left, and it's up on the other side, and it's like $3, right? Yeah. Pull, I'm looking at the cover's a little beat up. It's a little, like it's been in a basement in storage, and I'm looking at it. It's only $3, So I'm like, fuck. I wonder if this album's any good. So I slide the album out. It is immaculate. I'm like, oh, sweet. This one's coming home with me. I grab the Kiss Love Gun and I'm doing it or whatever. So it's one of those places where I go back just to see if I can find a gem or two just out of happenstance,
Yeah.
So I go in there and I'm looking and I see, Peter Frampton alive, and I'm like, oh, I should get that one. And I'm looking over here and I look out of the corner of my eye and I see an original Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. And I literally put my arm out to go grab it. And this guy and his wife slide right in between me and the wall and my arm. And the guy looks up and he goes, oh, Pink Floyd. And he grabs it and I go, hey! I go, where are you going with that? You know what I mean? And he looks at me and he goes, did you want this? And I go, well, yeah, I was just grabbing for it. And he goes, oh, I go, you've been collecting long? He goes, actually, I just started. Damn it. You know what I mean? I look at him and, and his wife's eyes are all big and she's just kind of looking at me, I'm just dwarfing this lady, and he looks at me and he goes, did you want this? And I go, well, yeah, I was just about to grab it. And he goes, oh, okay. And he hands it to his wife. Like, you're not going to muscle my wife around. You know what I mean? God, and she just looks at me and just goes, do you want it? And I go, no, I'm good. But damn it, I wanted it. You know what I mean? I was so like, ah.
It's like going to look at a guitar and seeing some other guy carrying the case out right as you're pulling up.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely. I did it with Two Doors albums at Cheapo on Snelling over there, and they were literally in the bin right next door. And normally, if I find a record that I want, I'll just grab it and I'll move it to the bin as I move down. And I left them there because I was right there, Yeah.
And
it's sure shit, this guy walks up and he scoots in right next to me and just kind of looks at me like, well, I'm going to get into this bin. As soon as he hit those Doors albums, he just picked them up, set them on top. And I'm like, oh, are you going to get those? And he goes, yeah, probably. And I go, damn it, I should have grabbed those, man. Damn it, I was so mad. And they were really good condition, too. And they were only like $4 or $5 a piece. I should have grabbed them, man. Oh, it just kicks my ass every time I think about it,
You go in and I was just in Fetus last week, I think, and there was Mike Bloomfield, and I think it was Mike Bloomfield and Al Cooper, some live record double live record from years ago, original pressing, and I looked at it and it wasn't in the greatest shape, and I was like, oh man, I should buy it, but I didn't, and it's like probably a really great album, but
Deep Purple, Mach 1, their first lineup. It's a 1968 or 69 album. Right. One of my favorite Deep Purple albums, dude. And it was one that I had to have. I looked online, I looked on Amazon, found a couple used copies, and they were like $20-$30, and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to hold off. And I put it, like I've got a couple forum boards that I'm on for vinyl.
Yeah.
And I put it out there, like if anybody sees this album, I took a picture of it from Amazon, sent it out there. I'm like, just let me know it's there or grab it. I'll come and pick it up from you, Nobody really, like, I've never heard that Deep Purple album. I've never heard it. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Like just downplaying it, So I went to Cheap.
Yeah, I got it. It's cool. I'm keeping it.
Right, exactly. And I went to Cheapo over in Blaine or Coon Rapids over here, and I'm just paging through, and I went right by it, and I was like,
wait a minute.
Hold on a second. Scroll back, and there it was, $298. $3 for the thing, and it's got somebody's name on the record
big
sleeve,
deal.
and I pulled out the record and it's immaculate. I was like, oh my goodness, man. I got a Parliament Motor Booty Motor Booty Affair picture disc that was like
Oh, wow.
it was like
Pretty cool.
$20 or something. But I looked at it online, and you only can see only one side's open, so you see the one cover.
Yeah.
So I'm online and I look, and there's one for $200, and I go, holy fuck, is this? I got a different picture disc. Like this is is a different one than I'm seeing, because the one side is George Clinton with a cowboy outfit. He's got a big 10-gallon hat and chaps on, right, for like furry chaps, and he's riding two dolphins. And then the other side's Sir Nose, going like that with a big pimp hat on, he's got a suit on and stuff. And they showed the other side of it, and I'm going, oh man, I think I got like a super rare one, but for $200, an immaculate piece for this one,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just listened to it the other day, man. It is excellent condition.
I
Good
almost
album.
put I almost put Maggot Brain by Parliament Funkadelic
Nice.
on my playlist, and
Yeah.
it was like, just another great guitar song. Really.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they've had some crazy musicians in that band.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Crazy musicians.
There was a story. Well, we were doing 10,000 Lakes Festival for a long time when we had Parliament Funkadelic play up there with George and Frankie, who was one of the original JBs, right? With Bootsy Collins.
Yep.
Was the drummer for Parliament, and he was with the band, and he was settling the show. So I was in settling with him, and Randy came in with me, my business partner, and Frankie sitting there counting the money, and Randy goes, "Yeah, I saw you guys back in 1970 or something like that. But they used to have this college convention in Kansas City called Super Sessions or something. I don't even remember what it was quite, but Randy named it, and Frankie stops and he looks at him and he goes, "Wait a minute, you were there, like at that show?" And Randy goes, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, it was all." And it was like all these college buyers, they brought like 2 college buyers from each college, because colleges back then would buy talent and present them at the different colleges, right? So they had this convention in Kansas City, and they'd bring all these college buyers in, and they'd do showcases by all these bands, and so Frankie goes, "You kidding me? You were there?" And he goes, "Man," he goes, "that show was really bad for us and really great for us."
Right.
And Randy goes, "Well, how so?" And he goes, "Well, we told we were going to do this gig, and George was like, man, we got to rehearse. We got to be tight for this, because these guys were driving around in station wagons, right? So there's like 40 in the band, and they're driving all these station wagons gig to gig with their gear and all the people in them and stuff like that." And he's going, "Yeah, man, if we can get, if we do really good, we'll get all these bookings. We can get a tour bus and whatever, And so Frankie goes, "We were killing it." He goes, "We rehearsed to death." He goes, "We were killing it." He goes, "It was going great." And then all of a sudden it was like the whole crowd got this look on their face, and they started leaving. And, I was looking around at the bass player, and I was like, what's going on? And I looked over, and here's George, and he had whipped out his junk on stage at this college buyers convention, And so here's George, exposing himself on stage, and people are horrified, and whatever. He goes, "It was horrible because, we didn't really get any bookings out of it, but it was great because it fed the story
mystique
behind
of it.
the mystique behind Parliament Funkadelic."
Yeah.
And so it was just like, for Frankie, it was mind-blowing that Randy was actually at that gig,
Wow.
and remembered that whole, whatever the event was that they put on. I just don't recall the name right off the top of my head, but I thought that was a pretty cool story coming right from the source,
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet Mudbone Cooper and Peanut from the Rubber Band.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to hang out with those guys. I worked with, do you remember Tribe of Millions?
Yeah.
Those cats, the drummer and the bass player were from Cincinnati, and I went on tour with those guys out there and just roadied for them and hung out with them. And I got to meet Greg Say, the drummer from Tribe of Millions. His sister used to be a backup singer in the Parliament.
Oh, wow.
So it was really cool. And then when they came to First Avenue, I got to walk George Clinton to his car, and it was super cool. As a kid,
Yeah.
seeing Dr. Funkenstein and the Mothership, and all the records that my mom had as a kid, and then standing there next to him and his wife, and his kid, and all these people, and I had the Motor Booty CD with me, and had him sign it. And he did Atomic Dog scribbles in there. And,
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. So lots of Parliament.
Yeah, I guess it was pretty hard to get fired from that band.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, yeah, that's a partying band right there.
Right,
They used to have their their party people come with them on tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're corralling everything that they
They were in
need.
the other station wagons. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They're on tour with them, Yeah. We'll just bring the supply with us.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, what shows do you got coming up? Do you have a lot of stuff in the works?
Well, we just got through a Soundset, which went great. We've got Warped Tour coming up in July. Slightly Stupid out at the Caboose Plaza. Prof out at the Caboose Plaza. Got Brian Wilson doing Pet Sounds at the Orpheum this fall, which will be pretty cool. And
Now that was like a obscure album that he did at one time, right?
well, it was the Beach Boys record.
Right.
It was really an iconic Beach Boys record
Okay.
at the time, and Brian was the writing genius
Right.
behind it all.
But he was losing his mind at that particular time too, wasn't he?
I don't know that he's gotten it all back, but he's doing okay. You
Right.
know what I mean? He's out on tour and stuff like that. But
Right.
Did
you happen to see that movie that they did?
I didn't know. I didn't see that.
Bizarre movie, man.
We did work with him. When he did the first time he came out and did Pet Sounds, we promoted that show.
Right.
And the last tour when he did Smile, we didn't do, but we're doing the Pet Sounds again this fall.
Okay.
And it was a great show. I mean, it was really, he had a great band, and now he's got Blondie Chaplin back in the band, who joined the Beach Boys in like '72. So he's an old Beach Boys, and he's got Al Jardine on this tour too. So. We got that, and like I said, Slightly Stupid and Prop at the Caboose Plaza, and Festival Palomino, which we started with Trampled by Turtles and First Avenue a couple of years ago. And
Who's on that one this year?
We've got the Arcs, Cactus Blossoms. The Arcs is Dan Auerbach from Black Keys, and his new thing, and oh man, I just there's a lot of them. We got
What's
some
it called? The
local bands.
Cactus Blossoms?
Cactus Blossoms. There's a local,
nice.
Local band that. I think they're local anyway, but pretty much local. They're, Luke's gonna shoot me for forgetting the name of the record label that's here, but I'm tired.
Yeah.
But the local Red House Records in St. Paul.
Okay.
They're on Red House Records,
Okay.
and so they're kind of getting really popular. We've got actually them playing with Trampled by Turtles in Duluth on July 9th coming up out at Bayfront Park. So,
Nice. That's
something
a
that we do.
nice spot.
Yeah, it's great. We've been doing, again with Nate at First Avenue, and we've been doing an annual, Trampled show out there. We had Atmosphere with Trampled a couple of years ago, and then we had Trampled with Four on the Floor and a couple other bands last year, and this year it's
Awesome.
Cactus Blossoms, and so we're trying to do that annually up in Duluth, and we'll do an occasional show here and there. We've got some shows that we'll be announcing later on this year that I can't mention yet.
Sure.
But, and I mentioned that we're producing the Summit Beer 30th Anniversary Backyard Bash with Bob Mould and a bunch of other bands that have local ties here. And we produce, some events out, like during James J. Hill Days, we'll have 2 days of concerts that are out in the parking lot, the Wayzata Beach parking lot out there that we produce. And so, we're busy. We've got, some offers out on other things. It's hard for me to keep track of everything sometimes when I'm just trying to think of them off the top of my head.
Oh, I can imagine, man.
But,
I can imagine.
it's all good. So we're keeping busy, and, Brian Stone Diplomats are getting a few gigs here and there, and we're having fun with that.
And don't forget, you're playing this Sunday.
This Sunday at the Joint, 1 to 5. And,
Matinee. Come have a few drinks. Listen to some rock and roll.
No excuses. Like I have to get up early in the morning to go to
No, that's
work.
brunch.
It's like,
That's Bloody Mary time.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, if you're getting up at midnight and going to work, okay, but
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come
no
in, man.
problem. Thank you.
I've had a great time. I've always wanted to pick your brain on a lot of cool things, and I know that you are one of those old school cats that does like to keep the anonymity of the people you work with, and I appreciate that a lot, because I know that there's probably a lot of things. You got into a little bit off the air, and I appreciate that. You're tickling my fancy while you know, without dropping names and things like that. And I know that's a difficult thing, but as you know, a guy in your position, you gotta keep that that respectability and professionalism. Yeah, for sure, man. I respect that very much, man, and I wish you the most the best of success, because you've done such great things, man, and always been very cool to me. And every time I see you, always have a smile and a handshake, and it's always great to when you know somebody in the scene and stuff like that. So it's very cool. Thank you for taking the time, dude. I really appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, we got one more tune. We're gonna lead out with one more Thin Lizzy tune. I know Chip will appreciate that, because he's a big if he's still listening.
Oh, we slipped in 2 Lizzies tonight. Huh?
Yeah, yep, that's 2 of them.
Cool.
Those were the ones that we didn't get the chopping block.
Right.
I kind of I slid that one down, because I know I'm a Thin Lizzy fan myself. So
cool.
big fan. Thank you again. Thank you everybody for tuning in and listening. If you didn't get a chance to listen to it tonight, we'll be uploading this to next Friday for release, and I'm not sure we'll have coming up here pretty soon. We've got fucking months full of cool guests. But again, I appreciate everybody listening in tonight. Do me a favor, check out ritualmadnesspodcast.com. On the right side, you can connect with us on a multitude of links. iTunes and Stitcher are both podcast applications that you can look up Ritual Madness Podcast on there. And every time that we upload one, it'll just pop up on your phone. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. This video will be uploaded sometime in the next couple of weeks here, because I've got a lot of editing to do here still. I've like 4 or 5 episodes I've got to edit and get everything together. But if you're in a band or have friends that are in bands and you want to submit some stuff, please do that at ritualmadnesspodcast@gmail.com. That's ritualmadnesspodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out ritualmadnesspodcast.com. Like I said, the episode tab, just click that. We've got 132 episodes up there for your listening pleasure. Lots of good stuff, lots of great bands, lots of local stuff, lots of talented folks. Musicians and tattoo artists and photographers and people like that. I like to hear stories and like to chit chat with people. You never really get a chance to sit down with someone while you're at a show, and you're kind of, in passing, you might be able to have a beer and chit chat about, what's happening in the last week or so, but you never get a chance to sit down for 3 hours and just BS about what's going on and how people got started doing what they're doing. So that's what I try to do. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm getting a little long-winded here. I'm getting tired. So you guys have a good night, and thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
Ritual Madness.